That's another phone that just went off. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff.
All right, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. Mr. Thomas, you can continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe, Ms. Gibb, you indicated that you first met Lori in October of 2018. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And that was at some sort of an event? I don't know that you actually said what kind of an event it was. What kind of an event was it?
I was at a regular LDS church building, and there was classes, and I was teaching.
So just in Sunday school type thing?
It was like a Saturday. Maybe it was like more of a Relief Society night where they have a Thursday night evening meeting for the women.
Okay. And you had met her there. Was Lori in your ward at the time?
No.
Okay. She was there with somebody else or just showed up?
She showed up with her niece, Melanie.
Oh, I see. And was Melanie in your ward?
No.
Okay. And you indicated that you had met Chad Daybell maybe 2 years before, a year or two before?
Correct.
Okay. And after meeting Lori in October of 2018, you guys became fast friends, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And so then you indicated that within a week or two of meeting Lori, that was the first time that you met Tylee and JJ?
Correct.
Okay. And the state was asking about the relationship between Lori and Tylee and Lori and JJ. How is it that you know anything about their relationships? What was your relationship with Lori?
Very close friends.
And for how long were you close friends?
When I met her, which was in October, that's when we met for the first time. And so we became friends instantly.
So October of 2018 to about October of 2019, you guys were really close?
Correct.
Okay. And would you see each other daily?
Sometimes, but then it changed over time.
Okay.
But it wasn't exactly daily, but it felt like it was so often.
Okay. And when you would meet with her, what was that like? Would it just be like calling somebody on the phone and say, hey, what do you want to do tonight? Or was it more of a during the day type thing? What was the schedule like of your relationship with Lori? How did that work out?
So she after I met her, she had my phone number, and so she communicated and asked me to meet her at places like the temple, or we would eat lunch. That was basically where we met.
Okay. And so, I mean, obviously the kids didn't go to the temple, right?
Correct.
So would they be there when you were eating lunch or something like that?
No, I would go over to her house shortly after meeting her.
Okay. So you indicated that JJ sometimes seemed frustrated?
Yeah.
And you indicated that was typical for a 7-year-old who has autism?
To me, it is.
Okay. I mean, autism is a big spectrum, right?
It is.
Okay. And so when you indicate that JJ would get frustrated, I mean, how familiar, I'll withdraw that. How familiar are you with autism and with the type of autism that JJ had, his type of spectrum?
I've seen different people in life, small kids in general, have autistic behaviors. And so I could tell with the frustration, not being able to communicate quite like he wanted to, getting frustrated, crying often, when maybe he didn't get his way or he was trying to maybe communicate or wanted to play with somebody, just the inability to have relationships, maybe like kids that don't have autism have.
In your interaction with Lori and with her children, did you notice any type of a schedule or a set pattern that JJ would need to be on? Anything like that?
He might have had a bedtime routine, but I wasn't aware enough to know how often their routine was. I wasn't around him, that often, so I don't know.
Okay. Do you know that JJ went to a special school?
Yes. I don't know if it was a special school, but I know it was a really nice, what do you call it, a private school. So I think they had a section probably for autistic kids, is my memory.
Okay. And did Lori ever talk to you about JJ's routines, the things that he had to do before he went to school, anything like that?
I don't recall.
Okay. After the day that Charles was shot and killed by Alex, you were there with Lori, right? Later that day?
No.
No? The next day?
No.
No. Okay. Had you ever gone with Lori to take JJ to school?
It's possible. I don't recall, but it feels like I have been. Feels like it.
Okay. Do you know that JJ had a routine that he would get in the car, go get some French fries or chicken fries at Burger King before he went to school every day?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that? Okay. You indicated on direct examination that Lori had said something about a belief in multiple lives or multiple probations. Is that right?
That's right.
Isn't it true that you said something to Lori about you felt like you had been on this earth 4 or 5 times?
No.
You never said that?
No, she thought that. That was her belief, not mine.
She thought that you had been on
Correct.
the earth 4 or 5 times?
Correct.
Okay. And during the course of the year that you guys were close, you never bought into that?
At times.
At times you did buy into that you had multiple lives, or you were...
I wasn't sure, but she was very convincing and tried to encourage me to believe it.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Lori meeting Chad for the first time. I think you indicated that was, let me see, a couple weeks after the October 2018 visit. Is that right? When you met with Lori?
It could have been that weekend. I don't remember exactly the weekend. It was in October, I know that.
Okay. And then a couple of weeks later, there was a meeting at Lori's house where Chad was there, right?
Correct.
And you indicated that Chad had spent the night there?
Correct.
Did you also spend the night there?
I did.
And weren't there also all the other speakers who were speaking at that conference? Didn't they all spend the night as well?
No, just some people did, but not everybody.
How many people do you think spent the night there?
maybe 5 or maybe 6. About 6 people, I think.
Okay.
Sorry, we have another third time this morning cell phone interruption. And we've been doing so well up until now. So it's just been the morning for phones. Everybody, please make sure they're on silent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Apologies to interrupt.
That's okay, Judge. Do you want to take a minute and let everybody turn their phones off, or just make sure they're off? Or are we good to just keep going?
Let's just keep going.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Certainly. So there were multiple people who spent the night at Lori's house. This wasn't some romantic encounter between Chad and Lori, correct?
I don't know what their desires for that connection at that time. I don't know what they were what their conversations about why he was staying there. But I know that there was some attraction. I'll just say that.
Okay, but this wasn't a hookup, right?
I can't agree with that.
You think that you and at least five other people who were at this conference and were in the midst of Chad and Lori having a hookup that night?
They weren't acknowledging of it. I didn't say that. I'm talking about them. That was their own personal, whatever they had going up to get together. That was between them. But the other people, I don't think they were aware of what was going on.
Okay. All right. And I believe you indicated that Lori said that she had been through 4 or 5 different creations. Is that right?
Yes.
4 or 5 probations. I don't know.
I used to know. I'm remembering 5, but it seemed like it changed again, and I don't remember the number right now.
Okay. And then you indicated that Lori had met with Chad in the temple with Moroni and Jesus Christ in the same room.
Correct.
Okay. And you had been to the temple with Lori on multiple occasions, right?
That's right.
And did this intrigue you at all?
Which part?
That Lori was married to Chad by Jesus Christ and Moroni.
I thought it was very unusual and different. I didn't really know what to think about it. I wondered, is that really true?
And what temple was this?
Like the Gilbert Temple.
And is that the temple that you normally went to?
Correct.
And had you been to the temple with Lori after this particular event?
Yes, we went often, so yeah.
And you never asked her to show you the place that she got married?
No.
Okay. There was some testimony about Lori having a special mission on earth, that being part of the gathering of 144,000 people.
Correct.
Yeah. And you indicate that was biblically referenced. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then at some point, Lori believed that she was one of the heads of the gathering of the 144,000. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And were you ever involved in or brought in to that gathering of the 144,000?
Well, she would indicate that the girls that she knew were part of it. It wasn't given to us as knowledge on our own, just it's what she believed and Chad believed.
Okay. And did you believe that you were part of the 144,000?
I wasn't sure. I didn't feel like it, but they kept trying to convince me that I was. But I didn't feel that calling ever.
Okay. But you were involved in what they call what has been referred to as castings. Is that right?
Correct.
And when you say castings, it kind of has a witchcrafty type of a connotation to it. Do you think, or no, or is that not what you think of?
It didn't feel like that. So.
Did it feel like biblically Jesus would cast out devils and cast out evil spirits, and that's what you guys were doing?
Correct.
Okay. So it was more like, not like casting spells, it was more like
No.
casting out devils by using prayer,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And you were involved in some of these casting out of devils and evil spirits with Lori, right?
Correct.
Okay. And during the times that you were doing these castings or casting out of evil spirits, did you ever feel like this was the wrong thing to do?
It felt very unusual. It was very innocent to me.
Innocent in the fact that you were just in a prayer circle, right? That you and whoever else were just praying about somebody.
Correct.
Or you were praying for the leaders of the world, or the leaders of the church, or for hunger to dissipate, or something good to happen, right?
No.
No? You never prayed about that?
Not that I have any memory of.
Okay. All right. So when you were doing these castings, was it for specific people only?
Yes.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about light and dark. I have some knowledge, and I think that this might be interesting to flesh out a little bit for the jurors. So tell me a little bit about light and dark. You indicated, I think, that someone can switch between being light and being dark.
They indicated that to me, yes.
They indicated that to you?
Chad and Lori, yes.
All right. And you never believed any of that?
At times I wondered if it was true. I wasn't 100% convinced.
Okay. But you were involved in casting out of dark spirits, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you believed it somewhat.
Like I said, somewhat, but not completely.
Okay.
I don't think they believed it at first, too, because they didn't know what they were trying to accomplish.
Well, when they were asking, when the prosecutor, Ms. Lindsay Blake, was asking you about who you had told about light and dark, and then she specifically mentioned the absence of Brandon Bedreau, you had said, and I guess I can't quote you, but I think you said we, and then you corrected yourself, and then you said Chad and Lori were the ones who were doing that, right?
They were in charge of doing that.
Okay. But you had injected yourself, right?
It was just an accident word.
Freudian slip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the first casting out of an evil spirit that you did involved Lori, Zulema, Christina, yourself, and somebody else. Is that right? I wasn't fast enough writing them down.
Those people, yes. I might have been one more person.
Who was the other person?
Did you say Nicole?
I did not, so
Okay,
that must have been the other person, huh? Who's Nicole?
A friend of Christina's, which were both friends of Lori's.
And was Christina there as well?
Yes.
Christina, okay. Mm-hmm. And what's Nicole's last name?
I'm not remembering. I didn't know her very well.
Okay. What's Christina's last name?
Atwood.
Atwood. And was this casting done in someone's home, or was it done in the temple, or where was it done?
It was done in homes, yes. I don't think it was done in the temple.
Okay. And what would this look like? I mean, what would a casting look like?
Lori we would all Well, most of the time. Maybe not the first time, but generally it was just people standing up, and I don't remember people held hands or not. I don't remember that. Just basically kind of stood in a circle together or lined up around, just being in the same room together.
And then what would happen?
And then she would try to express her castings out by her knowledge, whatever she could think of, maybe terminology that she gained from either energy work or maybe scriptural, those kind of things. I don't recall the words. And I think her friends would try to come up with something that they thought was helpful, and it generally sounded like something you would say in energy work. How I can explain it.
Okay. And what's your familiarity with energy work?
So I had a little bit of energy work done to me through a person who, it's called a motion code, where they ask the body questions, and often they would talk about how you were, connected to your ancestors, or you had different emotions going on in your body, and they would try to release it through they call it muscle testing, things like that. But some of the practitioners would sometimes able to communicate with spirits on the other side of the veil, like deceased ancestors or people like that. And so they kind of had their own language. I was never an energy worker, so I don't, remember all those words, but I just remember that was my experience.
So just to clarify, and I'm still a little bit confused about what went on in these castings. I think we established that it was a prayer, and each person would say a little part of that prayer. Is that how it would work?
Yeah.
Okay. And I believe you indicated something about disconnecting cords or trying to convince the spirit to leave the body.
Yes.
And it was all done with prayer?
I think you can call it prayer. It's my best word.
Okay. You're praying to God or your Heavenly Father to try to help you to get this evil spirit out of this person, or heal this person, or do something like that. Is that right? That's where you were going with that?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't want to put any words in your mouth. Okay. Let's talk about zombies. So, you had heard Lori use the term zombie, right?
Correct.
This wasn't the first time that you've heard the word zombie, right?
Oh, it's a worldwide word. Correct.
Right. And it's been around for a while, at least the 1960s from what I can see, right?
I believe so. I don't know when it started, but
you've heard it
your word for
growing
it.
up.
Yeah.
Okay. So when Lori talked about zombies, did you immediately think that they were going to die?
No.
Okay. What were your thoughts about that?
It was a bizarre teaching. I believe Lori thought it was bizarre at first too. It was very something she'd never heard of in the context of how it was explained to her through Chad.
Okay. Do you recall making the statement or writing down a statement indicating that Tylee had been a zombie since she was 12 or 13 years old?
So, yes, but what that means is when she was claimed to be a zombie, Chad would let her know that she truly became a zombie years ago. But that knowledge was, she was sharing it as she was 16 or 17. She was saying that, she became not a zombie right then, but he was trying to say she had actually turned it when she was about 12 or 13.
So that's what Chad said to you and Lori?
To Lori.
To Lori, and then Lori related to you?
Correct.
Okay. You indicated that Brandon Bedreau was a dark spirit. Is that right? Or he had a dark spirit?
According to their beliefs, yes.
Okay. And that he moved to even a higher level of darkness. He was part of Hitler's group during the World War. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And had you ever met Brandon Bedreau
I had.
before Charles's death?
Yes.
Okay. Did that jive with you that he was a dark spirit?
I thought it was, it just was continually bizarre. There's moments where he's 1 minute this and now he's this and then he's really this, and then it would go deeper into just different explanations of how much they would change into darker. And
this was kind of an ongoing thing with different people?
mm-hmm, correct.
Okay. I believe you said something about Tylee was told sometime between February and June that she went dark. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So she hadn't been a dark spirit the whole time. She just became dark sometime between February and June of 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And in September of 2019, you were told that JJ was possessed, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever pray for Tylee or JJ?
No.
No.
Mr. Thomas, would this be a good opportunity to take our lunch recess?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, we're just right before noon, so let's go ahead and do that at this time. I'll talk briefly to Deputy Ravello as well at the end here. We'll break for lunch and shoot for our 45-minute lunch, hopefully be back around 12:45 to resume with your cross-examination.
All right, please.
I'll just talk to you real quick back here about the phones when we get them back. Am I going to? No, okay, good. Okay. All right, thanks. All right. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we'll go back on the record on case CR 22-211624. Appreciate everyone going quick on their lunch break, I know, so we can maintain our schedule to stop at 3:30 or thereabouts. So we'll let the jurors be brought back in, and then you can continue with your cross-examination, Mr. Thomas.
All right, please. Jury's out present, count for you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Everyone, please be seated. All right, we are back on the record on KCR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. We just concluded the lunch break for the day. Mr. Thomas is conducting cross-examination of the witness, Melanie Gibb. If you'd like to continue with your cross at this time, you can, Mr. Thomas.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gibb.
Good afternoon.
So before the lunch break, we were talking a little bit about dark energies and those kinds of things. We talked about the fact that sometime between February and June, Tylee had gone dark. You recall talking about that?
Yes.
Okay. And then sometime in September, you were also told that JJ was possessed. Is that right?
September, yes.
Okay. And that was September of 2019?
It was around that time, whenever I flew in. I think it was the 19th.
Okay. And when they said possessed, you took that to mean that he was possessed by some sort of an evil spirit?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see here. We kind of bounced around a little bit. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the shooting of Charles Vallow on July the 11th. You indicate that you had talked to Lori about that particular event. Is that right?
Correct.
And Lori had told you that she did not witness the shooting. Is that right?
I just don't recall if she said she did or she didn't.
Okay. But you understand that there was some sort of an altercation?
Yes.
And that altercation was between Alex Cox and Charles Vallow?
Correct.
Okay. And Lori wasn't involved in the altercation to your knowledge?
There was a lot of verbal communication between the two of them. I don't know if there was any physical. I'm not recalling that part.
Okay. So when you stayed at Lori's house in mid-September, I believe you said it was September 19th, 2019, you said you did not see Tylee. Is that right?
That's correct.
Isn't it true that you and Tylee didn't necessarily get along?
We didn't have a relationship.
Okay. She didn't particularly like you, right?
She didn't indicate that she did like me.
Okay. And you didn't particularly have any kindness towards her?
That's not true.
You did?
I was kind. I'm always kind.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about you being kind to Tylee. What did that look like?
When I tried to introduce myself, she wouldn't really look at me. She kind of rolled her eyes and looked away and didn't seem happy that I was there. She didn't know me. Just first time, she'd ever heard of me that I know of. And so just from the very beginning, she didn't like me.
And that kind of continued throughout the time that you knew Lori?
Yes. And one time I tried to be nice to her. We were sitting at like a little restaurant, and I think I was trying to help brush her hair off her arm or something, and she didn't particularly care for that.
Okay.
But I had empathy for her, so.
Going back to the death of Charles, I believe you testified on direct examination that Lori had told you the day before Charles had passed away that if Charles was to die, then the money would go to Kay. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's how I worded it. Sounds right.
Okay. But you knew that information prior to Charles's death?
Yes.
Okay. And so there really wouldn't be any incentive monetarily for Lori to be involved in Charles's death, right?
No, I don't think that's true. I think there was, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how the wording was with the, I think she was starting to see that it was changed. The money was changed right up until that point. So I don't know if that's not, there would have been an incentive if he would have, no, that would have been, I'm just trying to clarify my own mind, so sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know if there would have been.
Okay. But you knew prior to him dying that the insurance policy had changed the beneficiary to Kay?
Yes, just prior.
Okay. Thank you. You talked a little bit to the prosecuting attorney about why Chad didn't get a divorce, and you indicated that either Chad or Lori, somebody, told you that he would be penalized, he would lose his exaltations if he got divorced.
Correct.
What did you mean by that? Who told you that?
That's what Lori told me.
Okay. And so the logic was he was just going to wait for her to die naturally and carry on this affair with Lori?
That was the idea.
Okay. Another thing that I had a question about, you were talking to the prosecutor today, and we talked a little bit about Lori telling you to tell the police that you had JJ, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay. And the police had called you, and there was no answer. You didn't pick up the phone right away?
Correct.
How many times did they call you? Do you remember?
It felt like it was 2 times. The Idaho police called.
Okay. And did they leave a message, or they text you, or?
I believe they did. It could have been both.
Okay. And you told them, and I'm just going to quote it as best I can from what I remember you saying. I had him, but I don't have him anymore. Is that right?
I didn't tell the Idaho people that.
Okay. Who did you tell?
That was Gilbert Police.
Okay. But you did tell them that you had JJ at one point, but you didn't have him anymore?
Correct.
That Lori had come and picked him up?
Correct. Something like that.
Okay. And that wasn't the truth?
That wasn't the truth.
Okay. And then did the conversation go on from there with the Gilbert Police?
Just small talk, but nothing significant. I just told them I was going, back to Arizona the next day and my plans for Thanksgiving.
So where were you when that phone call was made?
I was in Utah, and I was in the process of going down to Arizona to have Thanksgiving.
Okay. So you were living in Utah?
No,
No. What were you doing in Utah?
I was visiting my boyfriend.
Okay. And that's David Warwick?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys, did you ever get married to him or
Yeah,
no?
we're married.
Oh, you're married now?
Yes.
Okay. And so you were visiting him. That's when you got the phone call. And that's when you said you had him, but you don't have him anymore. And you're indicating that that was not the truth.
Correct.
Okay. And then you contacted law enforcement a second time, and that was after you had made the recording that we had just heard, exhibit number 42?
I'm not sure
So you
how many times I just know I contacted them after I recorded it.
Okay. So you recorded it, and then you contacted them.
We had talked prior to that, but because that's who I knew who to send it to, is because I already contacted Officer Pillar, so I knew to send it to him. So I let him know that night after I recorded it if I could send it to him, or if should I send it to the Idaho people? What should I do? And just said to I think email it or send it.
So did you? I'm sorry. Did you and Officer Pillar decide that you were going to record this phone call?
Oh, no.
But you had talked to Officer Pillar about doing this?
No, I just had a contact with him and communicated with him, saying I need to come and talk to you. I can't remember I'm trying to remember the dates if I had talked to him already, but it had nothing to do with the recording. Yeah.
Okay. And you indicate that one of the reasons that you made the recording was so that you would be able to have some sort of audio proof that you didn't know anything about where JJ was.
That's one of the reasons.
Okay. So it was a self-serving phone call.
It was a multi-serving.
I'm sorry?
It was a multi-serving purpose.
Okay. But part of it was self-serving.
Partially.
Yes?
Yes, partially.
Okay. And during that recording, at one point you said you would be safe if you hadn't opened dark portals. Your salvation is in trouble. My salvation is not in trouble. Do you recall saying that?
I don't remember saying my salvation wasn't. I don't remember exactly, but I remember the first part. What you said is that her salvation was in trouble.
What about the dark portals?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the dark portals? What does that mean?
Sure. So they often talked about creating portals. So Chad would explain to Lori how to make a portal so that they could. Hers was in her closet. I think his was on his bed or in his room somewhere, and that they could communicate through some kind of ability to communicate through a portal. Not that you could physically see anything, but it was something that they would make up in a spiritual realm in their mind, and that they would be able to communicate. And so they were participating in that kind of ideas. So that's how I would explain it.
Did you have a portal?
No.
No? Okay. You also talked about Korihor in that phone call. Who is Korihor?
Yes, I did talk about Korihor. He is a antichrist found in the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Alma. He was going around preaching of the idea of he was antichrist. He was teaching against the idea of a Christ coming to our world. And after he had questioned the prophet Alma, questioning him and saying, "Show me a sign that there is a Christ," he wanted proof. And he said, "Well, if it's God's will, you will be struck dumb." And so he struck dumb. And after he was struck dumb, he said that he was deceived by Satan or the devil in the form of an angel, and that he taught him some teachings that were pleasing to the carnal mind, insomuch that he had much success and convinced himself that they were true. That's what I was referring to.
And so you're referring to her as an antichrist?
Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned Alma in there. Alma is also a person in the Book of Mormon?
Correct. He's a person that believes in Christ as a prophet.
Okay. And you also mentioned, I believe, Joseph Smith in that phone call, or Lori did, one of the two of you, and he is also someone who is connected with the Book of Mormon.
In translating it, Joseph Smith was.
Okay. So all of the characters I hate to say characters, people that are in the conversation that you were talking about, biblically or scripturally, those were all either from the Book of Mormon or from the Bible?
I believe they were all from the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
You talked a little bit about talking to Lori the day that Tammy passed away. Tammy Daybell, you recall that?
Yes.
And where was Lori when Tammy had passed away? Do you know?
She told me she was in Hawaii.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe she wasn't in Hawaii?
No.
Okay. The prosecutor asked you a little bit about light and dark scales and trust scales and loyalty to different people. And then you went in and talked a little bit about vibrations. So tell me a little more about these vibrations. Was that a new concept for you that Lori was telling you about?
The idea of having a vibration high enough to be translated as a being, yes, that was a new idea.
Okay. This wasn't part of energy work or those kinds of New Age type of beliefs?
The word vibration is common amongst, I would say, alternative or energy work, but the realm in which they discussed it was at a different level, so had a new kind of a meaning to it. That was how I interpreted it.
Okay. And so, had you been involved in or had training or experiences with vibrations as far as energy work or as far as the new age or new age concepts?
The only thing I could probably think of is maybe doing some yoga, but we didn't really kind of talk. I mean, they talked about vibration a little bit, about, highest vibration is like love or peace, something like that.
So this isn't something totally new to you?
It's not totally new.
Okay. Just to end, I would like to ask you a little bit about Alex Cox, and you indicate that at some point he had totally bought into the zombie concept, right?
Correct.
And that you specifically said he had 100% believed it was true. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you had asked, I believe it was you that asked, what had happened to JJ. Is that right? Did you ever ask Alex that?
That's right, I did.
And what did Alex say?
He says, I said, do I want to know what happened to him? And he said, you don't want to know.
And then what was the conversation after that?
He talked about how the police came to his apartment, took his guns. They were really evil people, the police people were. And then Melanie was there, and she talked about how her house was broken into too. They took her, I think, money or something like that. And then Alex talked about getting ready to go on a honeymoon, or like get married to Sulema. And anyway, we just kind of talked about a bunch of stuff, and then he talked about how Chad had given him a patriarchal blessing, and talked about how he felt he was it was a very touching blessing for Alex, and very emotional about it. And then we met up with Sulema, during part of it, because she was just on the walking way towards her house, and then we talked about a little bit what was going on up there in Rexburg, just the police and this and that, and I don't know, those kind of things.
But it seemed like everything kind of revolved around, where was JJ? We're looking for JJ, right?
There was a little talk about that, but then they changed the subject and talked about what was going on and how they were being chased and those kind of things.
Why do you think they were being chased?
Well, that's what I asked them. I didn't understand why they were, and they just said the evil was after them.
Okay. So basically you asked, do I want to know what happened to JJ? And they said, no, you don't want to know.
Yeah.
And that was Alex. And was anybody else there?
Melanie was there.
Melanie who?
Pulowski.
Okay. She was there when that was said?
She was there. I don't know if she was right next to me, but she was, they were both together, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he just kept skirting the issue of, I'm not going to tell you where JJ is?
Yeah, he didn't announce it. And then later I'd ask Sulema, what did he mean? What does that mean? And she's like, and she had asked him, because she didn't understand either what had happened to JJ. And he told her that they couldn't be found. And so when I questioned her about it, I said, I'm very concerned about this. So I asked her what he told her.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Redirect.
So you were asked about a couple things that I just want to go over with you again.
Okay.
You were asked about Tylee not liking you.
Correct.
And I think you indicated that it didn't seem like she liked you. Had you been around other teenagers before?
Yes.
Had you seen other teenagers have an attitude?
Sure.
Was there anything about Tylee's behavior that you thought was completely out of the ordinary for a teenager?
If you have some teenagers that are ornery and disrespectful, then she would fit into that category. Yeah.
And I talked to you a little bit before about Tylee's interactions with her mother, Lori.
Yeah.
Did you observe similar behaviors towards Lori from Tylee?
Lori was generally pretty calm around her. She usually didn't react with her, disrespect. She tried to make friends with her most of the time.
Did you observe Tylee being disrespectful to her mom at times?
Yes.
During this time, was this towards the time that you were spending quite a bit of time with Lori?
Yeah. Well, yes, just throughout. Just, throughout, because she moved, and wherever she was, usually Tylee was with her.
I think they may have brought this up, but where did you spend Christmas of 2018? Do you recall?
Christmas Day?
Or just around Christmas. Did you go to anyone's house?
It seemed like I did something with Lori and her family, but I don't remember exactly what day it was.
And throughout your friendship with Lori, did you travel with her?
not in the airplane, but I flew to visit her in Hawaii, and then I went by myself, and then by myself I flew to see her in Texas.
And when you went to see her in Hawaii, do you recall approximately when that would have been?
February, I believe, the end of February 2019.
And did you spend time with her there?
Yes.
Did you notice anything with regard to whether or not she was in contact with Chad Daybell?
Yes, she was.
Was that pretty consistent contact?
Yes.
Daily?
Yes.
And did you overhear conversations?
I would hear a little bit. She often would sit in the balcony and talk to him for a while, and then we'd go to the beach and she would talk to him, and if we were at lunch or breakfast, she may have received phone calls from him, but I knew she was in correspondence.
Was that a daily thing?
Yes.
And in February of 2019, both Charles and Tammy were alive, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you also do podcasts with Lori?
I did.
And how often did you do the podcasts?
It seemed like they were once a week, and then maybe it changed to maybe once. It changed. I don't recall, maybe once a month to once every few weeks. It kind of changed a bit. She wasn't on all the podcasts.
And you were asked about JJ and what if he had any special services. Do you recall if JJ had a service dog?
He did.
Did Lori ever tell you if that dog went with them to Idaho?
No, I don't believe so.
This is beyond the scope of direct or cross.
I will sustain that. We're outside of the scope of direct.
Did Lori tell you that you had been on the earth before?
Yes.
And you were asked some more things about the temple. Is the temple related to the LDS faith?
Yes.
And when, before I'd ask you about sealings a little bit, sealings done at the temple, do sealings generally take place in the temple?
Yes.
And is that part of the LDS
Beyond the
faith?
scope of cross. I'm going to object.
That will be overruled. That went into on cross. So you can continue, Ms. Blake.
Are marriages common in the temple for the LDS faith?
Yes.
Did you want to believe Lori?
I think sometimes she's very convincing.
You were asked about Tylee being a zombie at the age of 12 or 13. And I believe you indicated that Chad had told Lori that?
I believe it was him. Yes.
And then you said Lori told you that Tylee became dark between February and June of 2019? Are those right dates?
Well, no,
or
it was like, I said between February and June, but as I was pondering, I think, I remember, I definitely remember when I was in Texas, you talking about it. So whenever I was in Texas, which I think it was in April or May.
And if someone was a zombie, was it your understanding that Chad and Lori would say that person was already dark?
Yes.
So was this an example of some of the inconsistent teachings done by Chad and Lori?
When you say inconsistence, what do you mean?
I think you talked about that it would evolve and kind of change. Was this
right.
an example of that?
Yeah.
You were asked about the switch in the life insurance policy regarding Charles. Could you have learned about that switch after Charles' death?
No.
Did you see Lori and communicate with her in the days after Charles' death?
Did I see her?
Did you see her or communicate with her in the days after Charles had passed away?
Yeah, about probably 4 days after he passed away, she contacted me. And I don't know if I saw her like the day after that or something.
And you were asked about that phone call and whether or not it was self-serving. Did you have concerns that someone would try to falsely accuse you of something?
Yes.
Who did you think may falsely accuse you of something?
Chad and Lori.
And you said that was only one of the reasons for the call. What was
Correct.
the other reason again?
I wanted to find out if I could find the whereabouts where JJ was.
Who did you believe would have the information as to where JJ was?
I believe Lori would have known because that's her son.
Did you turn that recording over to the police?
I did.
At the time that you made that call on December 8th, did you believe things Lori had taught you anymore?
No.
Did you at that time believe she was teaching false things for her own personal gain?
Yes.
You were asked about some of the concepts such as vibrations not being completely new words or new terms.
Yes.
Were some of the teachings of Lori linked or based on terms that were more mainstream?
They could have originated from them through different energy workers to different things they'd heard through the alternative field, and then it led into other things.
And you were, in your opinion, did that make it easier to believe them?
Yes.
You were asked about the term zombie as well.
Correct.
And you've heard the term zombie before Lori told it to you.
That's right.
And had you ever heard the term zombie in the way that Lori used it, though, before she told you?
No.
Was your understanding of the way they use zombie that the body of that person was still alive?
I'm trying to figure out how you're asking. Hold on. I just make sure I understand your question. Say that again.
I
maybe
can phrase
differently.
it different.
Yeah,
that might be helpful.
Yeah.
The way that Lori told you how zombies worked is the person's spirit would be pushed out of their body.
Right.
And the body would still be alive.
Right.
And is that the way that they use zombie to you?
That's the way they used it. Correct.
They weren't using it in the term that, would you say it was in the way you'd heard the term before, such as in a horror movie?
No.
It had a different definition attached.
Yes.
I think before you mentioned that Chad and Lori if they wanted people gone, those people became zombies.
Yes.
At some point, did you start to observe a pattern as to what was happening when someone was deemed a zombie?
Yes.
And what pattern did you start to see?
The pattern I start to see is when people in her personal life or close to that personal life, they started questioning her, not happy with the situations that were going on between her and her niece, and so sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought a little bit. Please ask the question again.
So I was talking if you started to see a pattern evolve with when someone was deemed a zombie.
Yes.
And what that pattern was.
Right. So the pattern was as soon as they started questioning her or, just thought something suspicious going on, all of a sudden that person became dark or a zombie.
And when you talk about someone, people that they wanted gone were deemed zombies. When they would deem those people zombies, were those people gone?
Most of them. Not every single person.
But did they deem Charles a zombie?
Yes.
And when I say they, I guess I should be specific. Did Lori deem Charles a zombie?
Yes.
Did Lori refer to Tammy Daybell as a zombie?
I believe so. She probably used that word, but I'm not 100%. I think so.
Did she refer to Tammy as being possessed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did she refer to Tylee as a zombie?
Yes.
Did she refer to JJ as a zombie?
Yes.
And we talked before, to the best of your understanding, Alex Cox believed what they told him.
Correct.
He believed what Lori told him about zombies.
Correct.
Did you ever observe Alex's relationship with Lori?
Yes.
Could you describe their relationship?
They seemed very close. They joked around a lot with each other. They seemed to be there for each other.
Do you know if at any point Alex was given a special designation as to what his purpose on earth was?
Yes, it was to basically be her protector.
Did you observe or do you know if Alex would do what Lori asked him to?
I felt that he would. I mean, I don't know 100% everything she told him to do.
I think we talked about, you'd indicated Lori had told you she was going to ask Alex to stay with her the night before Charles was shot by Alex.
That's right.
And Alex stayed the night?
Sorry.
Judge, I'm going to object. I never went into any of this on cross, and so she's just redirecting for her own benefit for redirecting. Has nothing to do with the cross exam.
I do agree we're outside of the scope again of where we went with both direct and cross at this point, so I'll sustain that.
And Ms. Gibb, you were asked if you met with the prosecutors prior to today,
Yes.
and if you went over your testimony with the prosecutors.
Yes.
And you indicated that you did meet with me.
Yes.
Do you recall, during the prep, did that influence your testimony today?
No.
Do you recall me discussing with you that all we ask you to do is tell the truth today?
Always.
And is that what you've done today?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Any recross, Mr. Thomas?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That'll conclude your testimony then, Ms. Gibb. You can go ahead and step down. Does the state have another witness to call at this time?
Your Honor, the state's next witness is Detective Duncan.
Okay, if you could give me just a moment, I'd like to, off the record here, just a quick sidebar only with my court reporter for a second to discuss how this device works. So we'll do that.
Judge, before we get started again, I forgot to inquire, may Ms. Gibb be released?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, yes, she can be released then. That'll conclude her testimony.
Thank you.
And you can call your next witness.
The next witness will be Detective Duncan.
All right.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, before we get started with the examination, just briefly, when you're answering questions, please use verbal responses, yes or no, instead of gestures. Please try to avoid speaking at the same time as any attorney questioning you so we keep our record clear. And then I do want to inquire on the exclusionary rule we have here because we are broadcasting this to other viewing locations. Detective Duncan, have you been viewing any of this trial testimony since the trial started in the case?
I have not.
All right. Have you reviewed any of that trial testimony on any media outlets or other places that have shown that online somewhere?
I have not.
Okay. Thank you for that. With that in mind, Ms. Blake, you can commence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell your last name?
Good morning. My name is Nathan, or afternoon. My name is Nathan Duncan. Last name is spelled D-U-N-C-A-N.
Where are you currently employed?
So I'm currently employed with the Chandler Police Department in Arizona.
How long have you been employed with them?
I was hired by Chandler Police Department in June of 2000, and I've been employed with them ever since. So going on 23 years.
What is your current title and or position?
So I'm currently assigned for the last going on 9 years or 8 years with the robbery homicide unit.
And is your title detective?
Yes, it is.
Do you have any specialized training in order to be a law enforcement officer?
So in Arizona, to start our law enforcement career, we attend an academy. In my case, I attended the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy in Phoenix. It was approximately 4 months. And then afterwards, you attend a post-academy with the department where you're trained by a training officer. Every year, we undergo advanced officer training where we learn about case law. We do defensive tactics. We do firearms training. More specifically, as a detective for the last 19 years, I do take and attend different conferences and attend different trainings, both in-state and out-of-state, on the prospective area of interest.
And were you working on July 11th of 2019?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall responding to a report of gunshots?
I did respond to a report of a shooting that occurred at 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler. South what? Four Peaks Place.
And you indicated that you responded to a call. What type of call was that?
So the call came out as a shooting call, and the reporting party was an Alex Cox, who had indicated that he had shot his brother-in-law.
And was that call made to 911?
Yes, it was.
Do you know the approximate time the call was placed?
I believe it was roughly around 9:30 in the morning.
And with your organization, or with your office, do they keep CAD notes?
We do.
And with the CAD notes, will that have the originating call information on those?
Yes, it would.
Detective Duncan, have you looked at CAD notes before?
Yes, I have.
And have you looked at the CAD notes in this case?
I have.
And if you were shown a copy of what's purported to be the CAD notes for this case, do you think you would recognize those?
I would.
Your Honor, I have what's marked as State's Exhibit 46. I would ask that the witness be shown these.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. If you'll give me a moment also, Counsel, I don't believe I have a bench courtesy copy of that. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff.
And do you recognize those?
I do. This would be a copy of a hard copy of the CAD notes for this particular case.
And do you see the originating time of the 911 call?
Yeah, the originating time, the call times received at 8:36 hours and dispatched at 8:37 hours.
And did you respond out?
8:37.
Did you respond out initially?
Once I heard the call and our particular unit for robbery and homicide, we will respond to that. So was I dispatched to this particular call? No, we just responded once we heard the radio traffic.
And do you recognize those CAD notes?
I do.
And are those, in fact, the CAD notes related to this shooting incident that you responded out to?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of Exhibit 46.
Any objection from the defense?
Your Honor, we would ask for some clarification on whether or not this is part of the 404B evidence that the court has previously ruled upon.
Let me have a brief sidebar with counsel, if I may. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's a kind of a technical legal issue that's come up at this point. I'm going to take a brief break just to my chambers to review something quickly. I don't think it merits an actual break to have you excused to the jury room, so if everyone can just wait here for, should be 5 minutes or less, then we'll continue back on the record. You're free to stand up and stretch your legs if you like, and then we'll get started right back up once I retire or return from chambers.
All rise. May be seated.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, at this time, the court will have an instruction for the jurors at this point in the case. I will note on the record this is an issue that was previously brought before the court prior to trial, and I incorporate findings I've made previous to trial in terms of this instruction. I'll also advise you members of the jury that you will receive a written form of this instruction before your deliberations commence, so you don't necessarily have to memorize this or note it all down, but I'll be giving you this instruction now and maybe at other times during the trial as well. So the instruction is this. Ladies and gentlemen, during the course of this trial, evidence will be introduced for purpose of showing that the defendant committed acts other than that for which the defendant is on trial. Such evidence, if believed, is not to be considered by you to prove the defendant's character or that the defendant has a disposition to commit crimes. Rather, such evidence may be considered by you only for the limited purpose of proving the defendant's motive, opportunity, intent, plan, or absence of mistake or accident. So that's the instruction that's provided. And with that, Ms. Blake, you can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, I think we'd left off with the introduction of the exhibit. I'm not sure if defense had an objection.
All right, Exhibit 46 has been offered. Is there an objection from the defense?
No, Your Honor, with that instruction, we have no objection.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. So Exhibit 46 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I next have what is marked State's Exhibit 29B. I would indicate this is a business record certification of Apple Custodian of Records. It's my understanding this has previously been stipulated to by counsel, and it deals directly with a iCloud account belonging to the defendant.
Oh.
I would move for the admission of those records.
Any objection to State's Exhibit 29B being entered?
No, Your Honor, we have previously stipulated that.
Okay, I thought so. Exhibit 29B is admitted. It may have been previously admitted, but it is admitted.
And just to clarify, that would include the documents that is referencing and the data.
As far as I understand, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, you said you did respond out to that report of a shooting. When you arrived on scene, were you assigned any specific tasks?
I was. In this particular case, I was assigned to assist Detective Coons, and he and I were going to be the detectives in charge of documenting the crime scene.
Is it common practice for you to have specific designations for different detectives?
It is. There's a lot that goes on involved in a homicide investigation. We usually try to break it up as much as we can into a lead detective who is in charge of the case overall. We have a crime scene detective We might have somebody in charge of interviews. So there's a lot of different moving parts in a homicide investigation that we try to assign to other investigators.
Do you know who the original lead investigator was?
So the original lead investigator in this case was Detective Nathan Moffat.
At some point, did that change?
It did.
And who became the lead investigator?
So Detective Moffat was promoted in June of 2020, and at that point I became the lead investigator in this case.
Prior to that time, did you continue to assist with the investigation?
I did. Unfortunately, I had other commitments after this case, immediately after, so I wasn't able to assist as much as possible. But shortly after, in January, I was able to obtain some records that are or iCloud account records and some cell phone records that I looked through and analyzed.
And going back to that July 11th date, when you were assisting with the scene, what does it generally include if you're the scene detective?
So as a scene detective, when we first get there, we have the assistance of a crime scene detective, or a crime scene technician, sorry. A crime scene technician is an evidence technician that will first take photographs of the overall scene. Once that is done, the crime scene detective itself will go through and determine items of evidentiary value that we need to collect, photograph, and then seize as evidence in this case.
As part of being the scene detective or assisting the scene detective, did you deal with the body?
I did. In this case, the body is as evidence as anything else in the scene. So I made a call to the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's office once our photographs were taken, and then a medical examiner investigator responded to assist us with the investigation and to take control of the body.
And I may have jumped ahead a little bit with this. Because you'd responded to the report of a shooting, when you got there, was it determined if there was a victim?
Yes, there was.
Was the victim alive?
The victim was not alive.
Did you learn the identity of the victim?
Yes, through our investigation and through the caller, the victim was identified as Charles Vallow.
And when you respond to the report of an unattended death, is it your common practice to investigate?
Yes, any unattended death that we investigate, we automatically investigate as a homicide until the evidence or witness statements proves otherwise.
And in this case, did you observe Charles Vallow's body?
I did.
What observations did you make?
So upon entering the residence, there is a large living room area. In this living room, it was a wood flooring, planked flooring. There was no furniture in this room. There were mirrors along the north side of the room, the west side of the room, and I believe the east side or south side of the room, which was odd. Charles was laying what we refer to as in the supine position or on his back on the west side of this particular living room. His head was to the north and his feet were to the south. When I had observed him first, his shirt had been cut away from his body to expose his chest. There was medical equipment on his chest that were used to confirm death. And his arms were to his side and his feet were stretched out to the south.
Did you make any observations as to injuries or visible injuries to his body?
I did. Charles had a wound consistent with a gunshot wound to the lower left quadrant of his abdomen, and that was the only wound at the time that was visible. He did have some bleeding in the webbing of his left hand, but other than that, there was not much other blood present.
As a detective, or even before becoming a detective, have you responded out to other shooting deaths?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever responded out to another shooting death with so little blood?
I have not. Normally in shooting cases, you will see much more blood than I observed in this case. We also look for blood spatter, or trails that would indicate any kind of movement of the deceased after they were shot. and I did not notice any of that present.
And you had previously indicated that it was Alex Cox that had reported this shooting.
That is correct.
Do you know what he reported in regards to the shooting?
Alex had told police that that he had shot Charles in self-defense.
Do you know if he indicated how many times he had shot Charles?
Yes, Alex had indicated that he shot Charles twice in the chest while he was standing.
And you indicated you only saw one bullet hole, but you said initially.
Correct, that's initially.
At some point, did you discover any other injuries to his body?
Yes. Lying next to Charles' body, can I go back a little bit? There were 2 shell casings, 45 caliber shell casings that were to the west of his body. Also next to his left shoulder, there was a bullet or a projectile that was laying on the ground, which was odd. He, like I said, very, very little blood present, but he, other than the webbing in that projectile. Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yes, you're fine. At some point, did you observe other injuries to his body?
Yes. Those other injuries are noted after the medical examiner arrives. We do not touch the body at all until the medical examiner arrives. They have jurisdiction over the body. Once the medical examiner arrives, they can do a more, not very thorough, but just a brief inspection of the body, if you would, making observations. In the center of Charles's chest was an AED pad that was used for defibrillation. That pad was kind of pulled back, and there was another similar hole in the center of his chest that was also consistent with a gunshot wound. Charles' body was eventually rolled, and once rolled, there was another wound to his upper left back or shoulder area that was also consistent with a gunshot wound.
And did you know or could you tell if the injury to his back would have been an entry or an exit wound?
I try not to make those determinations on scene, and those are more for the medical examiner to determine.
And the report from Alex had been that he had shot Charles twice in the chest.
Correct.
So at least Alex's indication where the shots had come from the front.
Front to back,
would have entered
yes.
front. And you have talked about the lack of blood. Do you know whether or not there was any indication as to whether or not CPR was performed on Charles or attempted?
So in the reports given in the 911 call that we listened to, Alex had indicated that he had given Charles CPR. Based on what I saw,
Objection, Your Honor. I know where he's going with this. I'm going to object to him responding that he can make some sort of a medical diagnosis as to whether or not Alex performed CPR.
I think it's premature, the objection at this point. We'll wait and see if that's where the testimony heads, but I'll keep that under advisement.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas.
Have you been to scenes before where there were injuries to a body and CPR was performed?
yes.
Have you seen the aftermath? Oh, I apologize. Yes. Have you been to other incidents where there were injuries to the body and CPR was performed?
Yes.
And I'm going to renew my objection, Your Honor. This is exactly where they're going.
Well, I understand, but additional foundations being laid now, so it's overruled at this point, Mr. Thomas.
In your experience, if CPR is performed, do you notice more blood?
You would notice more blood, yes.
And would that be due to the injuries?
With an injury to the chest and also to the back, you would expect as you are compressing on the heart that blood would either go to the front or to the back.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is calling for speculation. He's speculating as to what would happen when somebody's given CPR after being shot.
And, Your Honor, I believe he's speaking to his training and experience and what observations he made at the scene.
Yes, and it's overruled for that reason. Thank you, Ms. Blake.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I'll note, of course, you can cross-examine on the point, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
With regard to Charles' body, did you notice the amount of blood you would have expected to see had CPR been performed?
I did not.
And you indicated that Alex had reported he had shot Charles in self-defense.
Yes.
Were you able to make any kind of a determination if there had been a struggle or a fight based on the scene?
Charles did have some abrasions to his knees, were the only thing outside of those wounds to his chest and to his back. There were some abrasions. The house being kind of sparsely furnished, unable to determine if there was any furniture knocked over or any indication that two grown men had been fighting. So we were unable to determine whether or not an altercation occurred.
Did you locate blood anywhere else in the residence?
Yes. The only other place outside of where Charles was lying immediately, the only other blood in the residence was on a faucet within the kitchen. And in this case, Alex had indicated that he had washed his hands in that faucet.
And you indicated the medical examiner's office will show up before the body's removed.
They removed the body, yes.
And they do some kind of initial examination.
The investigator will do an initial investigation before they place the body in a body bag, yes. And they will also take notes for their investigation.
Were you present while that was being done?
Yes, I was.
Did you see Charles' body being removed?
Yes, I did.
And I believe you've talked about seeing an injury to his back, what appeared to be a bullet hole.
Yes, I did.
Did you make any other observations as his body was being removed?
Other than his kind of physique, his size, he was a man in his 60s. He was in very good shape, had athletic wear on. I did not notice any other bleeding on his body other than coming from his torso and the abrasions to his knees.
Did you notice anything with regard to the scene itself as he was being removed?
Yes, during the investigation, we did in that living room area. There is a very tall baseboard on the flooring in that wood plank floored room. On the east side of the room, there was a projectile that was stuck inside of the baseboard. That baseboard was, after being photographed, that baseboard was cut out as evidence, and the projectile was also kept as evidence. In addition to, after Charles was removed from the residence, we made the decision to bring Alex Cox back to the home and have him do what we refer to as a walkthrough, to try to have him explain where he was standing and what had occurred during that time. I made the decision that I did not want to give Alex any kind of perspective as to where he was standing. So out of the ordinary, we cleaned up a large amount of blood that was now pooled underneath him, and we cleaned that blood up from the wood flooring. When that blood was cleaned up, I noticed an indention consistent with a strike mark from a bullet in the floor.
And was that directly under where Charles' body was?
It had been directly under where his left shoulder was.
Did you check the floor for other similar marks?
I did.
Did you find any other similar markings in that floor?
There were no similar markings.
And we've talked about what the room looked like. Was there furniture in that room?
There was not, no.
Were you able to form any opinion as to where Charles would have been located when the second shot was fired?
Yes.
And what was your opinion?
In my opinion, based on the trajectory of the shot from the lower abdomen and the wound to the upper left shoulder and the consistency with the wound, Charles would have been laying on the ground when that second shot was fired.
Do you know if an autopsy was conducted on Charles?
Yes, it was.
Were you present for that?
I don't recall if I was present. Detective Coons might have been to that, but I have read the report, yes.
And is it common practice for a detective to attend the autopsy?
Every time, yes. On homicides, yes.
Was this, and you said a detective did attend the autopsy?
Yes.
So was this determined at some point to be a homicide?
Yes, it is.
If a shooting is done in self-defense, does your agency indicate that's a homicide?
Yes, it is.
So now fast forwarding to January of 2020, you took over as the case agent.
June of 2020, but January I started to review records, yes.
I apologize, yes. So January you start to review the records. So I'm going to fast forward you to January. You're still not the main detective on this, but you started helping a lot more again.
Yes, I did.
And you'd indicated that you had looked at some electronic records.
I did.
Do you recall specifically some of the records that you looked at?
Yes. The first series of records that I looked at were a phone extraction from Charles Vallow's phone. The second would have been an iCloud account called Lori for Style, which was linked back to Lori Vallow.
Did you look at any additional iCloud accounts?
With the discovery of reviewing the Lori for Style iCloud, an additional iCloud was noted that went by the name of Lolly Time.
And did you look at any iCloud accounts attached to Charles?
Yes, we also looked at Charles's iCloud account. We looked at Charles's Gmail account. We looked at phone records. So there's a lot of electronic data that was looked at during that time.
Did you review the extractions from those devices
I did.
and link to those accounts?
Yes.
Just one moment. And talking about Charles' phone, do you know how Charles' phone came to be in the possession of the Chandler Police Department?
Yes, we had learned that Charles' phone was the catalyst for an argument between Lori and Charles on July 11th. During that time, after Charles was shot, Lori had taken Charles' phone with her in his rental car. That phone was later returned by Lori to the Chandler Police Department.
Was an extraction done on Charles' phone?
Yes, it was.
And did you review that extraction?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall if you were able to view some emails?
I was, yes.
Were you able to view text messages or SMS or MMS messages?
Yes, I was.
And when you were looking through Charles' phone, were there specific things you were looking for?
There was. In the weeks to months following the death of Charles Vallow, there was some information that came forward that Charles was possibly killed because he was a dark spirit, a zombie, that there was some infidelity, some accusations of infidelity. So in that time, in reviewing those, I was specifically looking for information regarding that would help us to end this investigation.
Did you find some information that you felt was helpful?
I did.
Did you find some information that drew your attention?
Yes,
Did you document that information in a report?
I did.
And have you reviewed a PowerPoint that documents some of that information?
Yes, I have.
And the PowerPoint that you reviewed, is that a true and accurate representation of some of the items that you saw on Charles' phone?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I have what's marked as State's Exhibit 49. Defense and the court hopefully have their copies. If I could have the witness shown this.
You can have that provided to the witness at this point.
And if I can just have you glance through that.
Okay.
And does that appear to be an accurate representation of the PowerPoint that you looked at?
Yes, it is.
And does that appear to be accurate to what you had documented in your report?
Yes.
And accurate as to what you observed on Charles' phone?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of that exhibit.
Any objection from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. We would object. May I voir dire of this objection?
Yes.
When did you make this PowerPoint up?
The PowerPoint was, I've created several PowerPoints for this case, but for presentations, but this one was made over the last couple days.
For presentations?
Yes.
To whom?
To Maricopa County courts or the prosecutor's office. I've done one for them, and I've also done one for other investigators in this to kind of show them key details in this.
And when did you turn this particular PowerPoint over to the prosecuting attorney?
So this was yesterday and then reviewed today.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no idea if these text messages are what they purport to be. I don't know. I haven't gone through these particular texts to make sure that they're not taken out of context or if they're even accurate in what they are. So I'm going to object based on foundation. I don't know if these are what they say they are.
Ms. Blake, I'm concerned about that time frame for disclosure. I think at a minimum the defense is allowed to review and make sure that if this is a compilation or summary of other previously provided discovery that it's accurate. So I'll allow the state a response on that objection, but those are the concerns I see at this point.
Sorry, the state would cite to Idaho Rule of Evidence 1006 that allows for summaries in order to show the content of voluminous writings, recordings, or photographs. These, as the detective has testified to, these are accurate depictions of what are contained in police reports that have been turned over to the defense. These particular messages have been available in discovery.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes.
The police report she's referring to is over 1,500 pages long. So I have serious concerns.
All right. At this point, here's what I'm going to do. I'll allow the jurors to take our mid-afternoon break. I'll further consult with counsel here after they're excused for a moment, and we'll go back with the presentation after that. So let's have the jurors be excused at this point. We'll argue this a little more outside their presence and then take our break.
All right, please.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Blake, so on the objection, again, it may well come in under 1006, but the defense needs an opportunity to confirm that this is a summary of information they've previously been provided. So my suggestion is if you can point out to the defense where this was in the voluminous discovery that's been referred to by Mr. Thomas, then we can determine whether or not it comes in under 1006 or whether the objection is sustained or not. But given the timing of it, I do think the state should be required to show precisely where this information came from out of those voluminous reports to make sure that it's accurate, as Mr. Thomas has raised a concern about that.
And the state can understand the position on that. I would indicate that as part of the 404B, we did extract portions of the Chandler report, and those were provided to defense counsel. These would be in those extractions in the written format of the report. The phone extraction itself has also been provided. It would have gone out, I believe, in production 1, but we can look and find exactly where that is to locate these. But they were produced in both of those.
Okay, and they may well have been. I think it's up to you to point those out to the defense at this point so they can confirm that, in fact, they have been provided that to see if they have any other objections. So we'll let you wrestle with that issue for a bit while we take our afternoon break and then see where we stand after the state's had an opportunity to do that. So we'll be in recess at this time. All right. I think I'm going to have to get an update from council about how long that may or may not take. So if things go according to plan, we'll say 20 minutes. Thanks. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, before we bring the jury in, I'll just ask the parties to make their representations. We talked about a resolution to the issue of the timing of the disclosure of the Exhibit 49, and I think the parties have agreed on a way to get this resolved just by scheduling. So, Ms. Blake, what's the understanding of how the state will proceed on that issue?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe the parties have reached an agreement with regard to the evidence that the state was asking to have admitted. At this juncture, the state has agreed to move on with some additional questioning that deals with different materials, and the parties have agreed to take the night and come back and begin with that sometime tomorrow, depending on the rulings of the court.
All right, thank you. Does the defense agree we can proceed in that manner?
We agree to proceed in that manner. We are only waiving our objection to the timing portion of it. We haven't reviewed it yet, so we don't know about any other evidentiary issues.
Understood. So 46 has been offered. It has not been admitted. I'll hear any further objections if necessary tomorrow, but we'll pass over that part of the evidence at this point and allow the defense adequate time to review the underlying recordings or documents that were used to summarize under Rule 1006. And so the state, I understand, has additional direct for this witness that we can continue with this afternoon.
That is correct, Your Honor. However, I guess maybe before the jury comes in, the court had given a limiting instruction regarding 404B. I believe we are currently moving outside of 404B and believe that an instruction would be appropriate. And then if we head back into that tomorrow, I think a new instruction could be given.
All right. I guess I'm not really aware if we instruct going in and out of 404B. I think that instruction, when it comes up, is appropriate. I think as we move on to other topics, that can just be clarified again with the written instructions. But if the state believes there needs to be a kind of a now we're exiting 404B instruction, I'd consider that. I'm not really aware of that being required. If it helps, counsel, I think that during closings you can distinguish what was 404B, what was not, and that needs to be limited for sure with a instruction they'd be provided with.
And I think the state would agree that it could be done with the jury instruction. However, if the court would be willing, we do believe that an instruction given the specific type of evidence that the state is next going to be trying to admit, that it may be beneficial so that there isn't any confusion amongst the jurors that it could only be considered for limited purpose. These particular, one document has been stipulated to, or one exhibit is my understanding. The other one comes from an iCloud account linked directly to the defendant, and so we do not believe that it falls within that 404. It does not deal specifically with the subject matter that we 404B'd.
All right, Mr. Thomas, do you have any position on that request for a further instruction?
And we believe that anything coming from Arizona is 404B because it would deal with whatever happened in Arizona.
All right, at this point, I'm going to not give any further instruction on 404B for purposes of continuing with this witness, and we'll take that up if we need to and get clearly outside of the scope. But at this point, where this does all relate to Arizona matters and the acts for which the defendant is not charged here in this trial, I do think it's appropriate that the instruction's just been given, and then that can be explained further in argument or further instruction if necessary.
And, Your Honor, I guess if I may briefly.
Go ahead.
The state's only concern is just that, the defense taking the stance that anything coming from Arizona is automatically 404B. That dealt with specific actions, and I think the court indicated that. Specifically, during a prior 404B hearing, we talked about the shooting of Charles Vallow being the 404B. The evidence that the state is going to be attempting to introduce is a completely unrelated to Arizona document. It was simply located. This is one of the detectives who reviewed that through an iCloud account, which has already been stipulated that the contents of that iCloud account would come in. It in no way references or deals specifically with just the Arizona case or just the attempt or the shooting of Charles Vallow.
All right. Well, at this point, I think it is probably premature for me to determine that I would give the instruction until we get to that point. If it's clear that the evidence coming in is outside of the scope of 404B, then I'll reconsider providing some sort of instruction to the jurors. I just don't think I can do that at this point without knowing for sure what the evidence is until it's being offered. So I'll keep that matter under advisement, and I may give some form of instruction with that request if it's clear that we've moved outside of the scope of this 404B evidence that's been allowed in the case.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. With that, then, we can go ahead and have the jurors brought back in.
All right, please. Jury's all present, accounted for, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. Okay, we are back on the record. I'll remind the witness that you're still under oath. There was an exhibit that was offered. We've not yet ruled on that, and I understand the state will be moving on to another topic at this point of inquiry. Is that correct, Ms. Blake?
That is correct, Your Honor. The state would intend to move forward and revisit the other matter tomorrow.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Blake. You can continue then with remaining direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Duncan, as part of your investigation, at some point were you contacted about looking into a call placed to a mortuary?
I was.
Do you recall who reached out to you to request that you do that?
I believe that was Agent Wright with the FBI.
Did you in fact follow up on that request?
I did.
Were you able to get in touch with the mortuary?
Yes, it says Valley of the Sun Mortuary in Chandler, Arizona.
Did you request a copy of a call that was placed to them?
Yes, I did.
What was the specific call that you were interested in?
So there was a call that was placed in reviewing phone records for a phone number linked to Chad Daybell. A phone call was placed from a phone linked to him to the cemetery. And it was requested for me to go to that location or contact someone from that location and get the recordings of the phone call if there were any.
And were you aware if there was an answering service that also was attached to that call?
Yes, there is first an answering service recording, and then afterwards somebody from the mortuary does call back.
And had you heard the name Chad Daybell before?
Yes, I have.
When you began going through all the records, were you still investigating the homicide of Charles Vallow?
Yes, I was.
In your agency, is there a distinction between homicide committed in self-defense, like a justifiable homicide, versus just a homicide?
We basically treat both the same, whether it's self-defense or not. Either if it is self-defense or not self-defense, either case would get submitted to the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office for review.
And when you were reviewing these records in January, were you aware of any other pending investigations that were reported to be related?
Yes, I was.
And what were those?
So after the murder of Charles Vallow and the months following, we were aware that JJ and Tylee were not seen. So in examining these records, we were looking for any possible whereabouts of JJ and Tylee. We were also looking for any kind of information regarding a attempted homicide of Tammy Daybell. We're looking for records for attempted homicide of Brandon Boudreau in Gilbert, Arizona, and other crimes through there we were aware of during that time in January.
And, Your Honor, I have what's marked as States Exhibit 44, and I also have States Exhibit 45. These are the recordings of the mortuary call and the call center that were referenced. It's my understanding that counsel would stipulate to the admission of those.
All right. Does the defense object to the admission of Exhibit 44?
No objection, Your Honor.
Does the defense object to Exhibit 45 being entered?
No objection.
All right. Both Exhibits 44 and 45 are entered and may be published to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Right answer.
You're home?
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm assisting on the third call. How can I help you today?
We just had a death in the family, and we really don't want anything but a cremation and then to send the cremains to a family in Louisiana. Just a simple, nothing other than a cremation and sending him to his family for a service in Louisiana. So is there any way to know a ballpark price on that?
Yes, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Let me transfer you over to the director who can assist you with the pricing. What is your name, please?
It is Chad Daybell.
How do you spell the last name, please?
Dabal, Daybell.
How are you related to the person who passed?
I'm his nephew.
And then also, this is for the Valley of the Suns in Chandler, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, he lives there in Chandler. I live in Iowa, so I'm just trying to help out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, what is your uncle's name for reference, please?
He is John Daybell.
His last name?
Well, Dabal. The same. John. Uh-huh.
Does he have a middle name?
Myron.
M-Y-R-O-N?
Yeah.
And Chad, what is your phone number in case we get disconnected?
Yeah. This number, 515, I don't actually know my own number. Let me look real quick.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Five 402-0143.
Thank you. Is he at a nursing home, hospital, or residence?
He passed away in a hospital. I don't know the details. I'm just calling.
Yeah, it's just for to know, because sometimes it's different if it's a residential or hospital or a nursing home.
I'm thinking they're sending him to the medical examiner. I'm not sure. I should have had more information before I called. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. Cremation with shipping. To which city?
New Orleans. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, one moment please, Chad, stay on the line. Let me
Okay.
transfer you over to the director who can assist you with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Chad.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding. I do have the director, Carissa, on the line to further assist you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Your Honor, and I believe the court indicated, but may the state publish State's Exhibit 45?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
My name is Carissa. I'm a funeral director with Valley System Mortuary and Cemetery. I understand that your uncle passed away.
Yes. And I'm just starting the process for the family. He didn't have many relatives. I'm his nephew. I live in Iowa. But what they
Sorry to
want to
hear
do
that.
yeah, sad to see him go. Yeah, I think he's going to the medical examiner. I don't know all the details, but what the family basically wants is just to have him cremated there in Chandler and then have his cremains shipped to New Orleans. And we'll deal with the service later. So just trying to get a ballpark price.
Okay. So for a cremation, we are able to do our cremation for $1,699. Now, what that's going to include is the transportation into our care, the transportation to and from our crematory, our basic professional fees, as well as our crematory fee. Now, there's going to be a couple other charges there for you. So we are going to have death certificates, which are 20 away a piece with a processing fee. $15 permit fee. And then we're able to do that transfer through the mail for you, and that's $150 fee for you.
Okay. Like UPS or something, I guess.
Okay.
So close about 2,000 probably, in the ballpark. Yeah.
Close to that.
Okay. Well, that helps me a lot. I'm going to call one or two others, but I'll get back to you if we come that direction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you need anything else, give me a call.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Todd.
Detective Duncan, which city was Charles Vallow killed in?
Charles was killed in Chandler, Arizona.
Do you know if that call was placed around the time of his death?
It was placed the evening following his death.
I believe you indicated you were requested to look into it because the phone number on that call had been attached to Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Have you ever heard Chad Daybell's voice?
I have.
Are you able to recognize the voice on that call?
Yes, I am.
And who was that?
Chad Daybell.
Do you know where Charles was originally from?
Charles was originally from Louisiana.
In your review of the Lori for Styles, do you recall coming across a recording of a blessing?
I believe it's Lori for Style, not the Styles. I just asked Lori for Style. But
Lori for Style.
I do recall coming across a blessing, yes.
And thank you for correcting me on that. So in Lori for Style at iCloud, you came across a blessing.
I did, yes.
Do you know who the blessing was for?
The blessing was for Alex Cox.
And did you review that?
Yes, I did.
Was it an audio recording?
There is both an audio recording and a Word document transcript for that, yes.
Were you able to discern who else was on that recording?
Yes.
And who was that?
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Were you able to determine if it was a specific type of blessing?
Yes, I was.
And what type of blessing?
The blessing is referred to as a patriarchal blessing.
And are you familiar with that term?
I am.
Do you know if it's attached to a specific religion?
It is.
And what religion is that?
So patriarchal blessing is attached to the Mormon religion, Churches of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is a blessing that is given to any worthy member of the church. And it is a blessing that is given by a stake patriarch of that church, and a blessing that is given to provide guidance through your life.
Do you know who gave Alex Cox that blessing?
In that audio, that is Chad Daybell that gave Alex Cox the blessing.
And within the LDS religion, are you aware as to whether or not Chad held the appropriate authority to provide that blessing?
I've been informed that he is not.
And Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 50. It is the audio recording recovered from Lori for Style iCloud account. That is those documents and the data have been stipulated to through the business record, is my understanding.
And what's the exhibit number?
It is Exhibit number 50.
And you're moving to admit that?
I would be moving for admission.
Is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 50 can be admitted.
And Your Honor, I would ask to publish it to the jury.
All right, and how long is that?
I believe it should be, I will pull it up to get you the exact timestamp, but it's just over 20 minutes.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear that, and then that'll probably take us to the end of the day then, Ms. Blake.
Actually, it's shorter than I had remembered. It is 15 minutes and 42 seconds.
Okay, thank you for that information. You may publish this to the jury.
Chad Daybell. It is November 24th, 2019, Sunday afternoon, 5:15 p.m. We're going to give Alex Lamar Cox a patriarchal blessing. Alexander Lamar Cox. On this special day, I lay my hands upon your head to give you a patriarchal blessing as part of the member of the Church of the Firstborn that you have earned the privilege to be a member of. I do so by the power of the Melchizedek priesthood which I hold, and in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior, who has authorized this blessing, and is grateful that you are receiving it as you move forward in your life. You are a member of the house of Israel, of the 12 tribes, and you are a descendant of Joseph through the tribe of Ephraim, which grants you many blessings, particularly of spreading the gospel in these latter days and protecting and preserving those who seek to learn the truth, and that has been your mission on this earth, and will now expand into ways that we will discuss further in the blessing. I want to begin by opening up the portals of time and going back to your previous creations on which you lived. I see you on the third creation as a valiant warrior fighting for truth and righteousness, always seeking to do what is right. Then you progressed and were selected by the Savior himself to be part of the fourth creation. Great warriors were needed in that creation. Powerful goddesses were needed to be protected, and you were selected to help protect your sister. And you helped her in numerous probations as a defender. You have a special bond even from the premortal world. You connected there, and as she grew in power, you were right there beside her, always. With a humble heart, you both always were so humble. So as this fifth creation began, after you had been exalted in the fourth creation, when you could have gone on to exaltation of Holly, as a resurrected being, you accepted the Savior's invitation one more time to come to this mortal realm, to condescend as a God, to help us. You have already assisted us in ways that can never be repaid. But you will continue to do so as you move forward in this life. You were born into a family that needed you desperately, with a set of parents who spoke of the gospel with their mouths, yet did not live it. And once again, you were reunited with a sister who needed you to survive such an environment. In no way was it a reflection on either one of you that you lived in that home. You were put there to help each other persevere. But the lessons you had to learn in your youth have now made you both strong, powerful servants of the Lord that would not have occurred in a traditional LDS home. You had to go to great depths to achieve tremendous heights. And the fruits of those trials are beginning to be demonstrated. You were granted to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it was a strength to you. You learned about your Savior and grew closer to Him, and rekindled in some ways the connections you've always had with Him. And through adulthood, you've refined yourself. And I just want you to know that at this time the Savior is saying it to me, well done. Thy soul is cleansed. All is well. And now you'll begin into your terrestrial phase of this existence, that you'll be a powerful servant. I bless you with that knowledge that you will now move forward as a true warrior in ways that can be demonstrated through not only physical action, but through spiritual power that is coming to you and will be bestowed upon you. I bless you with the knowledge that through marriage you'll be united with a partner who will match your powers and complement your strengths. You'll be known throughout the world for your good-heartedness, your willingness to save souls all over the world through portals, and you will begin to gather the souls that come unto Christ. I see you in New Jerusalem, but more importantly, I see you as a messenger of the Lord. Surrounding New Jerusalem will be many small communities where people will come who aren't quite ready to enter those missions will be to go among the people and testify as a prophet that they can make it. You'll share your own experiences of overcoming adversity, and through your example they will rise up. You will give tremendous blessings to them, raise their vibrations, and be like a brother to many of these fathers who may have had doubts, but through your strength they will look to you as a hero, and you'll bring entire families that have been sanctified to the gates of New Jerusalem, and they will be allowed in on your word. For me, it's one of the many wonderful experiences you'll have. I see you doing that often, but then based on assignments, you might go further into the world. Always serving, always a missionary. And with your companion, you'll communicate with Mother Earth herself. You will know where to be before natural disasters happen. You can be on location to protect key leaders, church leaders, and to preserve who should survive. Little children, I see you gathering up little children in your arms, saving them from floodwaters. Just having a collage of moments that await you in this life, rescuing the pure and innocent, leading them to safety. Dozens of instances, and you will be looked upon as an angel on earth. You will literally glow for those who are allowed to see you, and those mortals who aren't allowed to see that will know through the Spirit of the great power you possess. The proper time, after many years of service in such ways, as the second coming approaches, you will know when it's time to move to the other side. This body that has served you well will lay down one day, and you'll pass your spirit will leave this body, and you'll be greeted wholeheartedly and welcomed by the Savior himself. You already know him. But that reunion will take place on a greater plane that the spirit you feel at that time, the vibration will exceed all. And before the second coming even occurs, the Savior will let that body rest a day or two, and much like himself, you will be raised and be resurrected, so that when the Savior does return, you will be right at the front of that amazing team of angels. It will sweep the earth, much like described in the renewed earth. You will be there. It will bring you great joy to help Mother Earth transfer to a terrestrial realm, to burn away the celestial refuse. At that time, you and Holly will still have assignments here temporarily, but then you'll move forward. She's already preparing a world for you two, and you will be able to be an eternal family with eternal children on that earth. And the glory will just continue for you now, on and on through eternity. So we bless you at this time with strength, power, and dominion over the callings you will receive, and that you are part of a very special team of people that are moving towards translation and transfiguration, and that the Lord will be with you at all times. You will be a patriarch in your own home. You will give blessings similar to this. Your veil will be essentially gone. You'll be able to see into the past and into the future for these individuals and share with them the same type of knowledge and truth. We bless you with protection throughout your mortal life. That angels will now be assigned to you as you reach this vibration. You have 9 angels assigned to you now to watch you from all sides through your faithfulness. I know you will stay faithful. You have a great mission. I protect you. I bless you with a strong protection against Satan and his followers, Lucifer, Cain, anyone else who seeks to oppose you. You will feel a new vitality and strength against them, and to use your priesthood to defend against them. I close this patriarchal blessing by assuring you that you will rise to an eternal glory, and that you will have an eternal family, and that your exaltation is assured through your faithfulness. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
All right, Ms. Blake, at this point then, given the time, I think we will adjourn for the day. Is the state okay with that?
Your Honor, could I ask one follow-up question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Detective Duncan, do you know if there was a timestamp or an indication of when that recording was made?
I believe in the metadata on that there is a timestamp, yes.
Do you recall what it is?
I want to say it was November 24th or 25th of 2020.
I have no further questions.
Okay, so
What? Actually, I guess I will clarify. Could it have been 2019?
Or 2019, sorry.
And do you know when Alex Cox, if he's still alive?
Alex is not alive now.
Do you know when he passed away?
I don't know the exact date, but I use a reference is he would have died in Arizona around about the same day that Tammy Daybell was exhumed.
Could that have been in December of 2019?
That is correct.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, and that's for today, but you're not concluding direct, right?
I guess I should indicate that, yes, for today with regard to that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Blake. So that will bring us up to the time to conclude for the day. We will adjourn. I'll continue to thank the jurors for their service reporting here each day. I'll give you your daily admonishment at this time to please continue to follow the court's rules about not talking to each other or anyone else about this case and not looking the case up on the internet, in the media, anywhere else. If you'll please comply with that today as you go home, and then we will see you again in the morning. Have you sign that juror affirmation when you get here, and we'll plan on starting again at 8:30 tomorrow on our regular schedule. So with that, we'll be adjourned for the day.
All right, please.
Thank you.